Yeah. Yeah.
Labels, when they serve us versus when they sentence us. There was a boy in one of my classes when I was young. They called him Frogger because of his face shape and his glasses. Once that label stuck, it became a game. They would ribbit at him in class, in the hallway, throughout the day, not once, not as a harmless joke, not as a nickname he chose, relentlessly. A sound followed him. A sound replaced his name. I remember standing up a few times. I remember trying to interrupt it, trying to say, let's not call him that. But it kept going. It ruined that particular class for me, but I can't even imagine what it was like for him, because once you see cruelty happening in plain sight, the room doesn't feel the same anymore. It's hard to learn while someone else is being humiliated, dehumanized. It's hard to respect the lesson when the real lesson in the room is that a group of kids can strip another child of his dignity and keep going. Every ribbit was not just teasing, it was a small public sentencing. And it said, "You're not one of us. We've decided what you are. Your name doesn't matter here." That boy grew up to be a school administrator, a person responsible for the emotional weather children walk into every day. And I wonder whether he hears things other people miss. That muttered nickname, the laugh in the back row, the moment a name gets replaced by a wound. I hope he does. But I also want to be very clear, he should not have had to become strong from that. He should have been protected. No child should have to turn humiliation into resilience, just so adults can call the story inspiring later. That's the danger of a label. Now, a label can serve us. It can give language, belonging, support, and clarity, but a label can also sentence us. It can reduce a whole human being to one feature, one mistake, one diagnosis. On Human Being with Dr. Susan, we're talking about labels, when they serve us versus when they sentence us. And here's the question: whose name have you replaced with a label, including your own? The power of a label. It can arrive in a second and echo for a lifetime. It can look like a joke. It can sound like feedback. It can hide inside a compliment. The strong one, the smart one, the easy one, the responsible one, the difficult one, the broken one, the successful one, the one who can handle it, the one who never needs anything. And sometimes a label can serve us. It gives us language. It helps us understand what we feel and what we need, where we belong. But sometimes a label sentences us. It becomes a cage, a costume, a sentence we keep serving long after the judge has left the room. We're going straight into one of the most ordinary and dangerous things human beings do. We label. We label ourselves. We label others. We label children before they even know who they are. We label adults and call it discernment. We label pain and call it personality. We label survival and call it dysfunction. We label difference and call it difficulty. And then we wonder why so many people are exhausted from performing a version of themselves that was never the whole truth. Labels, when they serve us versus sentence us, asks another question. What label are you still living under that no longer tells the truth. Welcome to today's episode, to this space of human being where we explore what it actually means to be human in life, at work, in relationships, and in the quiet moments between who we have been and who we're becoming. So, what is a label? A label is a word, a phrase, category, diagnosis, a role, reputation, identity marker, or description used to organize meaning. And that sounds harmless enough, and sometimes it is. Labels help us communicate quickly. They help doctors diagnose. They help people find support. They help communities form. They help us say, oh, there's a name for what I've been experiencing. But labels also shape perception. And once someone has a label, we often stop seeing the whole person. We see the label first: difficult, divorced, gifted, troubled, addict, leader, failure, depressed, lazy, successful, needy, aggressive, sensitive, perfect, half, old, young, broken. A label can open a door. A label can also lock one. So that's why the question is not, are labels good or bad? The better question is this label serving the person or sentencing the person? A label serves when it gives language, clarity, belonging, support, and choice. A label sentences when it reduces someone, replaces curiosity, and turns one part of the story into the whole identity. That's the spine of what we're talking about today. I know the power of a label. Before we go any further, I need to tell you something important. I am not anti-label. I can't be. In my first career, for the first 20 plus years, as a licensed clinical psychologist, I spent thousands of hours studying, assessing, interviewing, diagnosing, explaining, documenting, defending, and yes, labeling. I sat with people across from me and I listened carefully. I looked for patterns. I asked questions. I reviewed histories. I interpreted testing. I wrote reports. I explained diagnoses. I testified countless times as an expert witness in court. And in many of these moments, the label mattered. A diagnosis could clarify confusion. A diagnosis could help a family understand what they were seeing. A diagnosis could help a person access treatment, protection, accommodation, services, or support. A diagnosis could help a judge, attorney, physician, parent, teacher, or treatment team understand something that had been hidden or misunderstood or minimized or mislabeled. So let me be very clear. Labels are not the enemy. A good label can be merciful. A good label can say, there's a name for this. A good label can say, this is not a moral failure. This is something we can understand. And once we understand something, we can decide what to do next. That is the helpful side of labels. But here's what I learned from all those years of diagnosing and explaining human behavior. A label can organize the truth, but it cannot hold the whole truth. A diagnosis may be accurate, it may be useful, it may be necessary, but it is never the whole person. No human being is only anxious, only depressed, only addicted, only oppositional, only traumatized, disordered, gifted, disabled, high functioning, only anything. A label can help us see, but if we're not careful, it can also become the only thing we see. And honestly, labels make sense to my brain. One of my Clifton strengths from StrengthsFinder is arranger, the arranger. That means I naturally sort things. I see moving parts, I classify, I organize, I look for patterns, I figure out where things fit and how pieces work together. I'm the person who curiously wants to know, what is this and where does it belong? How does it relate to the other pieces we're seeing? What category helps to make sense of it? And that's not just psychology, that's human learning. Remember biology class? Mr. Twilly? King Philip came out from Germany seeking victory. You know what that means. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, variety. That little memory trick is all about labels. And it teaches us how to classify life, how to move from the broad to the specific, how to sort the living world into categories we can understand. And we do this everywhere. The clothes on your back have labels. The phone in your hand has a brand label. The drink going down your throat has a nutrition label, a warning label, a flavor label, maybe even a label that makes you feel like a healthier, cooler, more hydrated version of yourself. Sporty you. The billboard on the road you pass by has a label. A logo is a label. A title is a label. A medal is a label. A school mascot, go Bulldogs, is a label. A family name is a label. A diagnosis is a label. A political party is a label. And no, I'm not going there. A faith tradition is a label. A job title is a label. A t-shirt is a label you can wear. And labels are everywhere because labels are one of the ways human beings communicate. They compress meaning and send signals. They tell us what something is, what it belongs to, what it promises, what it warns against, what it costs, contains, and sometimes who we're supposed to be when we use it. Our dear friend Annette retired from the post office this week after decades of wearing a uniform, a label. How will her identity evolve now in this new space? So the goal today is not to rip every label off the world. That would be impossible. And honestly, it would be chaos and it wouldn't solve most problems. The goal is wiser than that. The goal is to ask, does this label serve? Does it serve me? Does it serve other? Or does it label sentence? That's the work, not label free living, label wise living. That's my invitation to you today. The song by Natasha Bedingfield, Unwritten. We're not finished stories. The label is not the ending. My cousin Jackie sent me a passage, and it reminds me of the labels that root us into the ground. She shared this: we never truly lose the people we love, even when they're no longer physically with us. Their presence continues to live on in the way we think, the choices we make, and the love they planted in our hearts. Every shared memory, lesson, and moment becomes a part of who we are. Their kindness guides us, their wisdom comforts us, and their love quietly walks beside us through life's journey. So though they may be gone from our sight, their spirit remains woven into our lives forever. Love leaves a label on the soul that time can never erase. So we're driving the other night to my Aunt Judy's award ceremony, where she's about to be bestowed with a gold medal from the Photographic Society of America and the Delaware Photographic Society. And screaming across our windshield, driving, I was maybe going 15 miles an hour, is this huge red cardinal, a male cardinal. And you know what I'm going to say next. Mom and I freaked out. It's Grandpa who taught Judy about photography, who taught Judy how to fly, who taught Judy to wear a t-shirt, metaphorically, that says, I am a photographer. This gives us another way to think about labels. Some labels shrink us, but some labels root us. Daughter, son, friend, cousin, passport holder, teacher, helper, beloved, human. Some labels do not trap us. Some labels remind us where love has been. And the goal is not to throw away every label. The goal is to keep the ones that tell the truth with kindness and retire the ones that keep us small. First person language. When the human comes first. If you've worked with me in a healthcare or an academic setting, you will remember me harping on this because I'm adamant about it. The human comes first. One of the most practical ways we can become wiser with labels is through something called person first language. It's the difference between saying she is diabetic and saying she is a person with diabetes. It's the difference between saying he is a schizophrenic and saying he's a person living with schizophrenia. It's the difference between reducing someone to a condition and remembering that conditions are only one part of the person. The Centers for Disease Control specifically advises against calling someone a diabetic because it can imply the person is nothing more than the disease. And the CDC recommends a person with diabetes or they have diabetes as people first language, emphasizing the person, not the disability or condition. Kathiri, thank you. I'm so glad you take that forward. I am not asthmatic. I am a person with asthma in remission. Now, let me be real. Language can get clunky. Sometimes people roll their eyes. Snowflake Susan, do we really have to think about this word so hard every time we want to just get the point out that we're talking about diabetes or asthma? And my answer is not every word needs a committee meeting, but some words do need care because the order matters. When I say a schizophrenic, the diagnosis becomes the noun. The person almost disappears. And when I say a person with schizophrenia, the person stays the subject. That matters because people are not their diagnosis. People are not their disease. They're not their trauma. They're not their worst moment. Can you imagine if you were only known by your most shameful moment? People are not their body size, their divorce, their debt, their addiction, their grief, their disability, their mistake, their family role, or their job title. I agree, ZZ. When you apply for a job, they ask you to identify your disability. And then what they list as disability is quite interesting. I'm so with you, Suzanne. Those things are real. They matter, and they could shape your life in daily and permanent, significant ways, such as Suzanne said, a job offering or not. But they are not you, the whole person. That's the difference between a label that serves and a label that sentences. A label serves when it helps us understand, when it helps us open access to care or gives language to pain. A label serves when it helps someone say, there's a name for this and I am not alone. But a label sentences when it becomes the end of the story. She's bipolar. He's an addict. They're homeless. She's difficult. He's a thief. He's disabled. They're poor. She's crazy. He's a narcissist. They're broken. Those labels may contain a piece of information, and that information may be true. But when they become the whole story, they become a sentence. A sentence both ways. A sentence as in words and a sentence as in punishment. A label can become something someone has to serve time inside. Yes, the human comes first. That is why person-first language matters. It takes a half a second and it can make all the difference. It slows us down just enough to remember there's a human being in there. Not a case, not a number, not a stereotype, not a problem to manage. A human being. Survivor felt like a badge of honor, and now it feels like a sentence. Man, I relate to that so much. Maybe it can be a little bit of both. So let's dig in and let's look at a necessary nuance. Identity first language. I want to add a little nuance because real life isn't simple. Some communities prefer identity first language. For example, some people proudly say, I am autistic rather than I'm a person with autism. And some people say, I am deaf with a capital D because deaf identity can include culture, language, community, and pride. Some people reclaim labels that were once slapped on them and used to shame them. So it's not about policing every sentence. It's about honoring personhood and preference. The best move is simple. When you know someone's preference, use it. When you don't know, choose language that keeps the person whole. And when someone corrects you, don't make it weird. Just say, thank you for telling me, and adjust. In the same way you might want to be wished Merry Christmas, they may want to be labeled or not labeled or called. Don't need a dramatic apology tour or an emotional press conference. Not, I guess I can't say anything anymore. Just learn and keep moving. That's maturity. Now, of course, there are some labels we absolutely want. For example, Philadelphia Eagle. Go Birds. Let's not overthink everything. If someone wants to label me as part of Eagles Nation, I will accept that identity with joy, grit, greased poles, and probably a little unnecessary volume. Because some labels feel like belonging. Some labels say, these are my people. A jersey is a label. A logo for the team is a label. A chant is a label. A tailgate is basically a sociology experiment with snacks. And listen, when the Eagles are winning, nobody says, please use person first language. I am a person who supports the Philadelphia Eagles. No, Eagles, Eagles. We say we're Birds fans. Go Birds can mean a million different things because this is who we are. That's the good side of labels. Belonging, inclusion, inside, outside, adjacent, partnership. That's the good side of labels. They give us identity and joy and ritual and connection. But even there, the same rule applies. The label is healthy when it helps us belong without asking us to disappear. It serves when it connects us, and it sentences when it traps us. So yes, call me an Eagles fan, but don't call me only that, because underneath every label, even the joyful ones, there's still a whole human being. Tom and I went to a Penn State, Nebraska football game at Husker Stadium. We also have gone in Happy Valley, of course, my alma mater. However, when we went to Nebraska, I pulled my blue and white jersey out of my suitcase, and I did pause for a moment and think, okay, these are cool, right? But we all know what Philly fans have done in the past sometimes when somebody wears their Chiefs jersey in town. And again, I'm so proud to be a Philly fan. But here I was, a Penn State fan, drove up to Nebraska to go to the game. And outside the stadium, we're walking in, and I could not believe how nice, kind, even celebratory Nebraska fans were. Good luck today. Whew, labels. Okay, now, human being. Speaking of whole human being, our name, the first important label most of us will ever carry, the word we most respond to biochemically out of all the words in the world, our name before the diagnosis, before the job title, before the family role, before the reputation, before the achievement, before the mistake, before the labels other people attach to us. There's the name. Your name is not just a sound. It's one of the first ways the world calls you into being. It's how people get your attention. It's how love finds you across a room. It's how you sign your work. It's how people remember you. It's how your story is indexed in the minds and hearts of others. This is why names matter. And I already shared with you my mom's beautiful teaching about how important it is to sign your name with care, even on a restaurant receipt, because it shows others and yourself that you respect you. The spelling matters. The pronunciation matters. Hendrik. Yes, it's Hendrik, like CK, but with a CH. The nuance matters. My dad's name is Elliot with one T, not Elliot with two T's. Elliot, one T. Now, to someone else, that may seem tiny, one little, who cares? But it matters because that's his name. That's his label. That's how he is known. That's how he is respected. And that's how his identity is held with care. And when you spell someone's name correctly, you are saying, I see you. I paid attention. You are not generic to me. You matter enough for me to get this right. And when it happens mistakenly that someone misspells or mispronounces your name, that's different. Shiva Ramakrishnan. I'm going to call you Shiva. It's easier for me. What message are we sending? And then there's my mom's nickname, Pinky. She got that name very early as a child because she blushed, sweet pink cheeks. And I have mixed feelings about that name. I know for a long time my mom didn't like that name, and it makes sense because a nickname can feel affectionate to the person giving it and embarrassing to the person receiving it. A nickname can feel like love, or it can feel like exposure. It can preserve a sweet story, or it can freeze you in a version of yourself you did not choose. But over time, my mom adopted it. She made peace with it, maybe even made it a bit of her own. And that's another fascinating thing about labels. Sometimes labels start outside us. Someone else gives it to us, maybe kindly, maybe carelessly, maybe cruelly. But over time, we may decide, I'm going to own this. I'm going to take the sting out of it. I'm going to define it myself. I'm going to make it mine. And we see this beyond families. Disenfranchised people and communities have sometimes co-opted labels that were once used to bully, shame, diminish, enslave them. They take the word back and they drain it of its power. And they say, you use this to hurt me. I will use it to name my strength. That is not small. That is reclamation. That is survival becoming agency. That is the bullied person taking the microphone. But here's the nuance. Nobody else gets to decide whether a painful label is empowering. Reclamation belongs to the person or community who lived the harm. You do not get to throw a word at someone and call it empowerment. You do not get to say, well, they use it, so I can use it. Nope, that's not how respect works. The person who was wounded by the label gets to decide whether to retire it, reject it, reclaim it, or rename themselves completely. That is the dignity of naming. Our names matter. The names we answer to matter. The labels we adopt matter. The labels we refuse matter. And sometimes the most healing sentence is, that is not my name anymore. If you come visit North Wilmington, Delaware, and you drive around long enough, you'll find somebody who knows me. Not because I'm famous, but because Delaware is so tiny, everybody knows each other. And depending on whether they call me Sue or Susan or Susabelle, you will know which era of my life that person represents. I go by Susan or Susabelle now, but I'll still answer to names from the past. They just remind me of how I was back then. So there's a line often paraphrased from Soren Kierkegaard. Once you label me, you negate me. And the exact wording gets debated, but the idea is worth holding. When I label you too quickly, I stop meeting you. I stop being curious. I stop asking what else is true. Remember that phrase. We're going to use that. What else is true? And what else is true may be one of the most human questions we can ask. So let's talk a little bit about the research. I'm going to nerd out for 30 seconds. Go with me. There is actual research showing that putting feelings into words can help you regulate emotion. In psychology and neuroscience, we often call this affect labeling, feeling labeling. A well-known UCLA study that found labeling emotions may reduce emotional reactivity through brain pathways involving the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, the medial prefrontal cortex, and the amygdala. Drop that out at a cocktail party. You'll get some eyebrows. In plain language, naming what you feel can help calm the emotional alarm system. That's why saying, I feel anxious might help more than I'm losing it. Although it might be more fun to say I'm losing it. Naming the feeling helps to reduce it, just like name the beast and it's disempowered. That's why saying I am overwhelmed may be kinder and more accurate than saying I am failing. A good label can turn chaos into language, and language is outside of ourselves, and therefore we are not stuck in it. Once something has language, we can work with it. So here's a practical tool. The first practical idea I want to give you today. Name it without becoming it. Instead of I am anxious, try I am noticing anxiety. Instead of I am broken, try I am healing from something painful, from a label to an experience. Instead of I'm a failure, try I'm in a hard chapter. Instead of I am too much, try I have intensity, depth, and needs, and I'm working on them. Instead of I am lazy, try I may be depleted, avoidant, overwhelmed, unclear, or undersupported. That tiny shift matters. Whenever someone says to me something about another person, she's lazy, she doesn't do anything, he's emotionally vacuous, they're an idiot, I speak up now. I can't allow that energy to be put on someone that I care about. I am statements can become identity, whereas I am noticing, the act of noticing creates space. And sometimes space is the beginning of freedom. So let's talk about labels that serve. Labels can serve us in at least 4 big ways. Labels serve when they help us heal. A good label can reduce shame. I'm not crazy, I'm grieving. I'm not weak, I'm burned out. I'm not lazy, I may be depressed. I'm not broken, my nervous system is responding to threat. I'm not difficult, I may be dysregulated. Because shame thrives in vagueness and overgeneralization. It loves when we say, I don't know what's wrong with me. A helpful label can say, there may not be something wrong with you. There may be something happening in you. That is very different. Labels serve when they help us find community. Widow, caregiver, introvert, neurodivergent, survivor, although we can take it too far, artist, first generation, leader, parent, believer, seeker, painter. Those labels can become doorways. They help us find people who say, I've been there too. And that can be one of the most healing phrases in the human language, to say or to hear. I see you. Labels also serve us when they help us advocate. Sometimes naming a thing is how we stop pretending it doesn't exist. A diagnosis can help someone access care. A disability label can help someone access accommodations. A professional title can help clarify responsibility. And a social identity can help people organize around rights, safety, dignity, and representation. Labels serve also when they help us to belong. That's where the t-shirt comes in. Sometimes a label is not a word someone calls us. Sometimes it's something we put on our own body. A t-shirt can say, this is my team. This is my school. I was born in Brooklyn. I was raised in Chicago. I care about Falk Elementary School. Here's my cause. Here's my concert. Here's my church. Here's my family reunion. Here's my race that I was in today. Here's my company. Here's my inside joke. This is where I belong. And I think we underestimate that because, yes, a t-shirt is just fabric, but it's also a signal. It says, I'm with them. I was there. This matters to me. I belong somewhere. That is why you keep that t-shirt with a million holes in it in your closet, because you were there. And that is deeply human. We are embodied creatures. The shell of us matters. What we wear, how we show up, how we mark belonging, those things carry meaning. Do you remember skiing, for those of you who skied, when you would keep your lift ticket on your jacket? I still have jackets with lift tickets and pins from ski club and ski team in high school. Sometimes we put on the shirt because we already feel connected, but sometimes we put on the shirt because we're trying to feel connected. I was a walk-on player at Penn State University, and I had gone to the Lion's Den and bought myself a Penn State soccer t-shirt. And I showed up at practice with that t-shirt on. And Coach Denny came over to me and said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Susan." He said, "Get out there and let's see you run." It's important. The outside can help the inside catch up. A uniform can help someone feel part of a team. A wedding ring can remind someone of a promise. A memorial bracelet can keep someone close. A concert t-shirt, Van Halen, can hold a whole season of your life. A sweatshirt from college can remind you of who you were before life got complicated. But here's where it gets tricky. The same t-shirt that gives belonging can also create boundaries. Us and them, in and out, accepted and excluded. We all want exclusive things, but we don't want to be excluded. A real fan versus a fake fan, a team player and an outsider, a good one and a problem one. This is the double edge of labels. Do you remember the little boy whose family couldn't afford a University of Tennessee shirt, but on the day of school, when the teacher said, "Come in wearing your team's t-shirt," he couldn't afford a UT t-shirt, so he made one. He took an orange shirt he had and he safety pinned, hand scribbled U and T onto his t-shirt, and he was made fun of relentlessly. His teacher posted that story online with the picture of that homemade UT t-shirt. And you can guess what happened. You probably even know what happened because it went viral. And now millions of people have a t-shirt exactly like the one that that little boy hand scribbled because he couldn't afford the official Fanatics version. The team adopted that version and they sent him a truck full of volunteers' items. Labels gather people and labels can separate people. They tell us who we are. And if we're not careful, they tell us who we're allowed to become or who we're not allowed to become. So maybe the question isn't, should I wear the t-shirt? Maybe the better question is, does this label help me belong more deeply to myself? Or does it require me to disappear in order to belong to the group? I was proud of my high school classmates. When we were planning our last reunion, they said, "Hey, for our pregame party the night before, let's invite the class before us and the class. In fact, let's invite anybody who's a Brandywine Bulldog." I was so proud in that moment of that inclusive message. Belonging should not require self-erasure. Now, make no mistake, the class of '87 had its own gig the next night, and nobody else was invited to that. There are moments when belonging should be expanded, and there are moments when belonging should be dedicated. But belonging should never require self-erasure. A healthy label helps you belong without asking you to disappear. India Ari sang a song, "I am not my hair. It's part of me, but it is never the whole person." Now, that was labels that serve. Let's talk about labels that sentence, the dangerous side. A label sentences us when it becomes too small for the truth. Oh, Susie, that's cute. A label sentences us when it stops being a description and starts becoming a decision. A label sentences us when it turns one moment into someone's whole identity. And a label sentences us when it makes us stop listening. Research on diagnostic labels shows that labels can have both benefits and harms. We know this. They can validate people and open access to support, but they can also contribute to stigma, lower expectations, over-treatment, or seeing a person through a narrow lens. She's Jewish. He's trans. They're from the other side of town. He's a singer. She's in the band. They are jocks. So the research shows several domains of consequences following diagnostic labeling. And those researchers emphasize the need for more investigation into how those labels affect individuals, families, professionals, and communities. That nuance matters. The problem is not that we use labels. The problem is when the label replaces the person. Understanding says, now I have language, let's get support. Dismissal says, that's just who you are. That's how you are. That's what you are. Understanding opens options. Dismissal closes them. And that's the difference between a label that serves and a label that sentences. When I was in 4th grade, a little boy in my class soiled himself. And we knew through our olfactory senses long before we knew from the little boy being removed from the classroom that day. And the cruelty, the laughter, the relentless shaming, it gives me nausea when I think about it. But I also have to admit that I couldn't ever see that little boy again without remembering that moment. So I was ashamed of that, and I wasn't sure what to do with it. How do we move beyond labels? The answer is to remember there's a whole person, beautiful, flawed, but capable in other ways, for other reasons, person behind there. Some people love a label because it saves them the inconvenience of thinking. Oh, she's dramatic. Really? Or did she just say the thing everyone else is whispering? He's lazy. Really? Or is he exhausted, undertrained, grieving, depressed, unsupported, or completely unclear on what success looks like? She's high maintenance. Maybe. Or maybe she has standards and you were hoping she came with a low effort setting. Some of us are not high maintenance. Some of us are just not available for emotional IKEA furniture anymore. No tiny wrench, no paper with unclear instructions, no missing parts, and no pretending this is fine. So here are 10 labels that sound positive, but can still sentence you. I want you to listen to these and tell me if you recognize yourself in any of them. They sound like compliments, but they can still become cages. Number 1, the strong one. Translation, please don't need anything. Number 2, the responsible one. Translation, we're going to keep handing you things. The funny one. Translation, please make us comfortable even when you're hurting. The smart one. Translation, you're not allowed to struggle. The nice one. Translation, please don't have boundaries. The successful one. Please maintain the image. The helper. Translation, your needs come last. The spiritual one. Translation, don't be angry. Number 9, the easy one. Translation, please don't inconvenience anyone. And finally, number 10, the leader. Translation for that is please absorb everyone else's anxiety and call it strength. This is why we have to interrogate even the flattering labels for ourselves before we let them in. Because a compliment can still become a contract you never agreed to sign. 2 examples of labels in popular media. You'll recognize at least one of these. The movie, The Breakfast Club. The whole movie is built around labels. The brain, the athlete, the basket case, the princess, and the criminal. And the beauty of The Breakfast Club is that the labels start to break down. They become real people, not types, not roles, not categories, people. Or think about Wicked. Elphaba gets labeled wicked, strange, dangerous, difficult, other, green, but the label says more about the society around her than it says about her. Sometimes the person called difficult is the person telling the truth. Sometimes the person called too much is the person refusing to shrink. Sometimes the person called wicked is the person who will not participate in the lie. That's why we have to be careful. A label may describe behavior or expose the discomfort of the person doing the labeling. That's why in psychology, we often say that the scapegoat, the ostracized one, is the healthiest one in the system because they are not willing to collude with the bully and they pay a price. You remember the Scarlet Letter, one of the most famous literary examples of labeling, where Nathaniel Hawthorne wrote about Hester Prynne, who's forced to wear the letter A as a public mark of shame. That's what labels can do when they become social punishment. If you haven't watched the Netflix series Unchosen yet, oh my goodness, watch it. Taking one part of a person's story and making it the only thing the world is allowed to see. And this still happens. Maybe we don't sew letters onto clothing anymore, but we still put invisible labels on people: divorced, difficult, unstable, promiscuous, addict, angry, failure, lazy, do nothing, TV hound, elite, broken, other. Other has become a verb, otherized. And once a community agrees on a label, it can be very hard for a person to be seen clearly again. That's why labels are not just language, they are power. In fact, the difference between a flower and a weed is a judgment. So in reclaiming the label, you get to say, you don't get to define me from your fear. You don't get to use one word to erase my humanity. I will tell you who I am. That's not just language. That's power returning to the person. That's when Frogger slips away as a label and the name of that person becomes a school administrator. So here's my invitation to you today as we close up our discussion about labels. I want you to be brave and decide what labels you hold. Some are beautiful when they're chosen freely and lived honestly, but others it's time to shed. Here are the labels that I want to keep: human, beloved, learner who is becoming and free, daughter, wife, sister, auntie, cousin, friend, community member. A label serves us when we give it language that helps us. A label sentences us when it becomes shame. Don't confuse the two. You can have a past without being reduced to it. You can have a diagnosis without becoming only a diagnosis. You can be named by love instead of fear. And maybe the label that fits best today is simple: human. Notice the labels you put on yourself and others this week and ask yourself, what else is true? You've been listening to Human Being with Dr. Susan right here on Sandcastle Radio, America's hottest online variety and music station. I hope you will follow me on YouTube or Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Human Being is a discussion that requires both of us to take a risk. Thank you for joining me today on Human Being. I'll see you next week and every Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern, right here on Sandcastle Radio. Thanks again for joining me. I'll see you next time. Yeah.